Hey guys, it's Hannah, and today we are going to be talking about a book that I just recently finished and I have fallen completely in love with. I've read it twice already because I read it and then I reread it instantly because I loved it that much, and that book is Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. As you all know, I don't film book reviews that often. It's usually for a book that's in a series that I've been reading or one that I'm just super enthusiastic about and just have a lot of feelings and thoughts about, and that's what this book is. If you don't know, Taylor Jenkins Reid is the author of The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, which is one of my favorite books I've ever read. It was my favorite book of last year, and I absolutely adored that book. And then I've read like her entire backlist, and I've loved all of her other books as well. And then this year she came out with Daisy Jones and the Six, and I was so excited when I first heard about the concept of this book, not just because she was writing a book, because I love all of her books, but the concept of it alone was just extremely intriguing to me. So for the most part, I'm going to be talking about this book in a completely spoiler-free way, so you can stick around if you haven't read the book. But once we get like more into it, I'll eventually get into some spoilers because there's no way I can talk about this book without spoiling some stuff, because I have to be able to talk about the spoilers in order to express why I love it so much. So once we get there, I'll let you guys know once the spoilers are coming, but for now you can stick around. Daisy Jones and the Six is also our bookmarked book of the month for the month of March. If you don't know, Bookmarked is a weekly live show that I host with my two friends here on BookTube, Haley from Haley and Bookland and Zoe from Read by Zoe, and we just kind of do bookish discussions every single week, and we just started doing a book of the month for every single month, and we chose Daisy Jones and the Six for our very first book, and I'm so glad that we chose this because it was a perfect first book. This book is an oral history of this fictional band called Daisy Jones and the Six that was extremely popular in the late 1970s, and it's about why this band broke up. No one knows why they ever broke up until we get this oral history and we discover what happened to this band and what led to their downfall. I'm actually not a huge fan of 70s music or like 70s rock stars. I was never really into Fleetwood Mac. Like, I've listened to Rumors, I love specific songs, gotta love Landslide, like who doesn't? But I was really never into that era of music. It was never something that I just found myself drawn to. So even when I heard the concept, even despite the fact that I found it interesting, I was kind of hesitant because I thought that I wouldn't be able to get too into this book because I'm not really a fan of 70s rock. But let me just say, you do not have to like 70s rock bands or anything about the 70s, honestly, to get into this book at all. I'm sure that if you do, it'll have another layer of meaning and depth to you, but coming from someone who literally doesn't listen to any of that music, you do not have to. It's not going to take anything away from the book for you, and I promise it is so worth the read. So the story is an oral history, like I mentioned. So the entire book is told in the format of like an interview, so we have different characters' names and then what they say. So it can be kind of jarring if you're not used to reading that because it is essentially all dialogue. I actually personally listened to the audiobook, which is what I highly, highly recommend you do. It is a full cast audiobook, so every character has a different narrator. I know that Taylor Jenkins Reid cast the audiobook herself, so it's just phenomenal. I truly think it's the best audiobook I have ever listened to, and I highly, highly recommend checking out the audiobook if you're interested in that because it's so worth it. I'd kind of classify this as historical fiction almost, but also a bit of contemporary. It's kind of hard to put it into a category. It feels like you're almost reading a nonfiction book, and I know that that was the intention behind it when she wrote this book. It kind of feels like you're reading a biography about this band's journey, and it doesn't feel fake sometimes. Like, I truly believed that this band was a real band, and I was devastated at the end when I finished it and I was like, this is a fake band, I can't even listen to their music, and they're never gonna get back together, so what am I supposed to do now? I've had a lot of people ask me if I like this better than I like The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, and that's actually a very difficult question for me to answer. I think that they are two extremely different books. Obviously, they both feel very similar because they're written by the same author, and both of them are kind of like the account of this person or these people's lives, but I think they're trying to achieve two very different goals, which is why it's hard for me to compare the two. I think personally, objectively, I find Evelyn Hugo to be a better book because it's more intricate and complex, whereas this one feels more like a singular story that just kind of sticks with you. Evelyn Hugo feels like a true experience. That's kind of the way I think of the difference between the two of them. That's why I think this book is actually more readable, because it's just such a short and sweet story. I mean, it's devastating, don't get me wrong. When I say sweet, I don't mean like it's actually happy, because it broke my heart. But the difference is that Evelyn Hugo is far more complex and intricate, and I do tend to prefer that, but this one is very rereadable, which is why I reread it instantly right after I finished it the first time. But that's not to say that I don't love this book or don't think it's intricate or complex at all, because I do think it's all of those things. In my opinion, this is probably one of the best written love stories I have ever read, because I think it's just a very intricate look at the relationship between these few people and what leads them to make the choices that they make. I hesitate in labeling this as a love story because it's so much more than that. It's not just a love story. I think it's more of a story about relationships, and I think that can be extended onto anything else. The main focus of this is a relationship that these few people have with each other, but I think the metaphor can be extended out into other things, other relationships we have. One of the huge themes of this story is addiction, and I think that the way that relationships are discussed in this book can definitely be extended out into the relationship that people have with an addiction. That's true for many facets of the story. That's just one example that I can think of without spoiling anything, but I think the book does a beautiful job of having that discussion. It truly makes you feel like you have been transported into this world of Daisy Jones and the Six, and you're just fully invested in their story. Like I said, you truly feel like they're real because that's just how well written it is, despite the fact that it's entirely dialogue. And I will also say there are plot twists and turns in this book that I absolutely did not see coming. There was a portion of the book where I was reading it, I loved it from the beginning, but I was kind of getting to a point where I was like, this is gonna be a 4-star book. Like, I really do enjoy it, but I don't think that it's going to wow me. I think I'm just going to like it. And then I got to a certain point in the book where everything just suddenly changed for me. And all of a sudden everything clicked in my head and the story just clicked together for me. And then it instantly became one of my favorite books because I think it's just brilliant. Another thing that I think is so exceptional about this book is that it's going to feel different for every person who reads it, which can obviously be said about any book that you read, but I think this one especially, that's heightened in here because you're just reading an oral history. You are going to feel certain things about certain characters. They are all telling the same story, but none of them remember it in exactly the same way because it happened 40 years ago. So there are moments in the book where people will be telling the exact same story, and someone will say, oh, she was wearing a white tank top, and someone else will say, no, she was wearing a yellow shirt, because no one actually remembers exactly what someone was wearing at a party when everyone was high 40 years ago. It's not possible for everyone to remember that. And it happens with minute details, but it also happens with very significant aspects of the actual story and things that significantly affected people's lives. So a lot of the time you have to decide who's telling the truth. And the story actually begins with an author's note that discusses this topic, and it talks about how the truth is actually in between the stories that people tell, and I absolutely believe that's true, and I loved that about this book. So much of the story is about what is the truth, and we'll never technically know the exact answer because everyone remembers things differently, and people are going to lie about certain things to protect themselves or other people, and you have to decide where the truth actually is. And it is usually in that in-between space of different people's stories. I also absolutely loved the characters. This is one of those books where you will start off liking or disliking certain people, and then by the time you get to the end and you understand people's objectives, you understand where they're coming from, it starts to kind of change your opinion on pretty much everyone, or at least that's how I felt. There were characters that I started off despising in this book. I thought that they were arrogant or this or that, and by the time I got to the end, everything started to make sense. I realized that I was being judgmental of this person or that person because I wasn't getting the full picture. And I love when a book can make you think that way. It can change your thinking, and that's how you know something is well written. And like I said earlier, I feel like everyone who reads this is going to have such a different experience with it because you're going to side with different characters depending on your own experience. And there's so much that's open to interpretation within this story. And I just think that that's such a unique aspect of this book that you don't experience as explicitly in other books. So yeah, I cannot recommend this book enough. Like I said, I've read it twice already, and I definitely plan on rereading it again just because I'm so utterly in love with it. Even if you're just looking for a good angsty, and I mean angsty love story with so much drama and so much turmoil and just pure like heartache, this is exactly the book for you. I think it took something that was technically conventional and just a classic love story and turned it on its head and turned it into something completely unique, and that's what I appreciate so much about it. I'm so unbelievably excited for the miniseries adaptation. I cannot wait for it to come out. I was reading the book and the entire time I could just picture the entire series in my head, and I'm hoping that they do it justice because this could truly become one of the best shows I've ever seen. Alright, so moving on, I want to talk about just a few spoilery aspects of this book because I just can't not. So from this point on, if you haven't read Daisy Jones and the Six, then I suggest you click out of this video so that you won't get spoiled. Go read the book, listen to the audiobook, come back, watch the rest of this video and discuss it with me because I just have so many thoughts and I'm so emotional about it. So goodbye to all the non-spoiler people and hello spoiler people because oh my god, I shed so many tears. The most significant spoilery thing I want to talk about is mostly just the 1979 Chicago performance, because from that moment like to the end I was in tears. Actually, it started a little bit before that when they were doing their SNL performance and Camila is watching Billy and Daisy sing this performance and she says that like he took her hand and that was the first time he had touched her in like months, they don't even know how long, and he could just feel it and Camila could see, she just knew, and that moment broke her heart because they're so in love, but like, oh my god, I can't. The moment that like truly broke me, like I read this part and then I was crying until the end, is when they are at their Chicago performance 1979. They're singing Honeycomb and Daisy changes the lyrics. I'm getting chills again. Daisy changes the lyrics in Honeycomb back to the original lyrics. And I lost it. They're performing and she says that for these 3 minutes she can sing this song with the man that she loves, and then she sees Camila and she knows that he's not hers, Billy is not hers, he is Camila's, and she just does it. She changes the lyrics back and oh my god, like I can't even explain to you what happened to me. I completely lost it. And then from that moment on, I was just crying until the very end because we get into Billy going to the bar and talking to that guy, and then we get into Julia finding out that she is actually the author of this book, which I did not see coming at all, and then Camila talking to Daisy about Billy and how she can't let her do this, like she can't let Billy leave because she knows that Billy loves Daisy, but she knows that their love for each other is bigger than this, and she can't let Daisy come in between that because it's only going to tear Daisy apart too. And the fact that Camila just knows that it can't be Billy who sets this right, it can't be Billy who leaves, it has to be Daisy. Like honestly, I cannot. When she says, "I'm rooting for you, Daisy," like Camila just, the fact that like this entire time I was reading the book and I was thinking to myself, like, why does everyone talk about Camila in such like a positive way? Because everybody else complains about absolutely everybody else, but nobody is ever bashing Camila. And then the minute you realize that she's dead, it changes everything because people don't talk about people who are alive the same way they talk about people who have died. You remember people who have died far more fondly. You don't really mention their flaws. You talk about everything that you loved about them. So it changed everything and it made perfect sense. When you find out that Julia is the author of this book, it completely changed Billy's character for me. From before that point, I was thinking, Billy is so arrogant sometimes, it's just so overwhelming. Why does he lie so much about certain things? And then the minute you find out that he's telling this story to his daughter, it all makes perfect sense. He would be omitting certain things if he's telling the story to his daughter. He would try and make himself look better. He would try and make his marriage to her mother seem more faithful than it might have been. And it just changed absolutely everything, and I think that's where the true brilliance of this book lies. I just have so many emotions about it, like I can't even express them properly because I've never seen another book that's done this so intricately. And Daisy Jones is such an incredible character. A lot of people are saying she's unlikable, which I guess to some degree is true because she's kind of a terrible person sometimes, but I don't think she's unlikable at all. I think she's incredibly strong and so brilliant. Imagine being that deeply in love with someone, but having enough respect for him and his whole family to just leave. She loved him like with everything in her, but she still left because she knew that that's what was best for him and his family. She couldn't do that to him. She couldn't do that to Camila or Julia or his kids. And I just think that's so unbelievably brave because a lot of people wouldn't do that. And Billy as well, like there's so much passion and emotion between the two of them, him and Daisy, and he can't let himself act on it because he has too much love and respect for Camila. The way that we see this dichotomy between love and passion that he has for Daisy and love and commitment that he has for Camila is just so beautiful. The intricacies of this relationship, which I kind of find to be one of the best love triangles, if you think about it, I think I've ever read about. It's just so heartbreaking because you don't know who to root for, because I'm rooting for all of them. I want all of them to be happy, and honestly, it wasn't really possible. And then, of course, you get to the epilogue, which at that point I was already sobbing, but then I just couldn't stop. Like, I was reading this book at midnight, like I finished it at midnight, and I was just lying in my bed sobbing to myself because of that epilogue. Like, I couldn't handle it. The fact that Camila knows her life is ending and she still wants Billy to be happy, and she knows that Billy being happy means him being with Daisy in some capacity again, and asking them for a song, saying they owe her a song. Like, I'm getting chills again because it's just so beautiful. I am so deeply emotional about this book because I think that it's one of those books that almost anyone can find something in it to relate to. Like, not only am I here for this incredibly angsty love triangle story, like discussion on relationships, because I love that type of thing, but there's just something in this story that I feel like almost anybody can find a part of themselves in it. So yeah, it just broke my heart to pieces, and I will never recover. But there you all have it. That is it for all of my thoughts on Daisy Jones and the Six. Like I mentioned earlier, Daisy Jones is our book club pick of the month for Bookmarked, and our live show is going to be on Zoe's channel on March 31st. So I'll leave all that information linked down below if you want to join us and discuss the book with us or read along with us. We're going to be talking about all things spoilery during that live show and just dissecting the book. But if you have any other thoughts that you would like to discuss on Daisy Jones and the Six, feel free to comment them down below. Please try to keep it spoiler-free, or if you are going to talk about spoilers, just let people know so that they don't accidentally read spoilers. If you'd like to continue talking about the book with me anywhere else, you can follow me on any of my social media. All my links are in the description box below. But thank you all so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!